is really high, which one ends up as the one that we select? Is it need or is it opportunity that is going to help us choose these? And as Jonathan described it, there's too hot and there's too cold and there's just right. That's what we're after. And then another question was like, how can we really be looking at these without considering the specific site? And we were really exploring what these criteria or what these indicators will get used for, and that it's not just for selecting the TPAs, but that it'll help us evaluate and develop ultimately the action plans. These are the things that we're trying to get to, which led us into the final point we talked about here, which was that maybe we could approach this by describing what those ideal characteristics of that complete community are, and then identifying where there are needs in each of these locations, and then look at what this program really has to offer if what we can provide matches what those needs are. But the first step, as I said, was in describing the characteristics of that ideal community around the spot that's got the 15-minute service. So by definition, the transit criteria in here, we're only looking at places that have or will have that 15-minute service. So those transportation kinds of things, those are a given. Now let's look at what the rest of the characteristics we want are. Okay.
Good afternoon. We decided to comment on the location efficiency category as well as the economic development category. For location efficiency, I'm sure we're all very familiar with the concept that's emphasized heavily in Mayor Kevin Johnson's Greenwise Sacramento initiative of the 20-minute communities, i.e. where you can get all your needs met within a 20-minute walk of home. It's very important that we emphasize connectivity of the various modes, biking, walking, etc. One way to achieve that is via the concept of complete streets, i.e. streets designed to accommodate all of those modes. Now, one of the issues that could come up is, of course, right-of-way, and we can certainly look at the concept of the road diet, reducing the number of vehicle lanes to accommodate more of the pedestrian and bicycle facilities. On the subject of economic development, whether we wanted to give more priority to residences or businesses, jobs within close proximity to transit, we've noticed that people are more willing to tolerate having a home further away from transit than their place of work. So when we balance those out, we definitely need to make sure that we place the higher priority on having a huge number of jobs in close proximity to transit. Anything else? All right, thank you. Robert.
Great. Well, hopefully we've captured all of that and you'll give us your sheets, but it sounds like you had some interesting discussions, so we thank you very, very much for your input on that. We will take these back and fold them into our process. So we had one other thing that we wanted you to do today, and in your groups, if you'd like. And if for some reason you'd like to switch around, you can. And we haven't tied you to the tables, but these are pretty good sizes. So maybe you can stick to the same size. Anyway, as you saw on this other green sheet, we also pulled out from the orange, larger sheet, the sort of suggested measures. And what we wanted to do, we also have the pink sheet, which were the sort of equity indicators, which we tried to fold in as well here. In the other part of this effort is developing a regional plan for sustainable development, which is really looking at how do we better integrate all of these different regional planning efforts. We plan for transportation, we plan for economic development, we plan for infrastructure in some cases, et cetera. And there are also federal and state requirements for what we do for environmental review and other things. How can we better integrate what we do to really look at our region's conditions and sustainability, and so that we can really continue to work on complete communities and our region's sustainability. So that's part of our work in this project as well, and since we have this before you, we thought it would make sense to start looking at essentially what one group had brought up, which was the idea of these are not just considerations for this assessment process, but also considerations of what would make for success. So we have this green sheet as well, and we wanted you to go through sort of a similar exercise in looking at these, but in this case, actually kind of picking out, if we were to start to build a list of performance measures, or measures that we would include in our regional plan that say, these are the things we really ought to be looking at as we look at the success of transit priority areas in our region, what kinds of measures should we make sure that we're looking at? So the focus of this next exercise is to look at this green sheet. You're also welcome to look at the CRC piece and the blue sheet, and choose 5 to 10 that your table would prioritize as performance measures for looking at whether TPAs are successful. And then the same thing, select a reporter and report back on 1 to 2 priorities. And again, if you want to make comments on one sheet and give that back to us as from your group, that would be great. If you want to submit individual sheets, that would be fine. So any questions on that one? Otherwise, we'll move into that. Okay, great. So we'll maybe take, I don't know,
I can't do it again.
15 minutes or so to do this,
It was nice meeting
and then we'll do
you.
the report backs.
Thank you for being here.
Bye-bye. Take care.
Okay.
I'm going to acknowledge we had a little bit of uncertainty at our table about the task, and we worked individually. So this is more an individual report. I looked at these criteria, and I guess what I came down to was the fundamentals of what I think are really the most important are that ultimately we have to have a high-functioning transit system, so it has to be convenient, it has to meet the needs of the residents, of the folks who are going to be using the system. Interwoven around there is a system of pedestrian and bicycle connectivity so that folks can get out of their car and can get around in the community. And underlying all of it, it has to work economically. So I put down a realistic development plan or economic plan so that it meets market needs and you can actually see some return on the investment. So it looks like it'll really pencil out. And those feel like the things that we have to bring to these projects to see them actually work.
Great, thank you. Those are great considerations for performance measures. Next, we have Paul.
Yep. We were keen on community involvement, making sure, getting back to our earlier discussion about disclosure, that everything's disclosed to people, that there are no surprises when all of a sudden there's going to be a transit-oriented development in their neighborhood. So they've got to be engaged there. Number 2 is, if we want to, a lot of our concerns are just getting the thing built, right? So any transit-oriented development needs to be built. It's nice to have it on pieces of paper, but we got to get it built. So we're looking at the entitlements issue on that there's land use and zoning that support the mixed densities and price points, and that there's affordable residential development attached to it. The next item was the traffic level of service standards allow congestion in infill areas. I mean, it's just something, again, getting the thing built. And traffic's it's always gonna be something that comes up. You can just cure it right now, that it's just, that could just make the project not work. We looked at on equity. Equity is very keen for us in terms of all the measures there that equity's gotta be central to consideration of whatever TPA is identified. And then back to getting it, the project built is CEQA review. We need to make sure that CEQA review is handled here at this point, because without that, again, there's measures to stall infinitely some project.